I'm Kelly Hogan, and welcome back to my Zero Carb Life. I wore this same shirt last week when I was at the beach. Now I am at a campground. My parents have a little pull behind camper, and we are here for a few days. This shirt was sold out. It sold out really quickly, but it is back in stock in case you're interested. Eat the meat, save the humans. Okay, let's focus. Today we are talking about how to know how much meat to eat. And I think there are three primary schools of thought in the carnivore universe. And I'm going to try to hit on all three and then teach you how to use an app that can allow you to choose which one you want to be from day to day, month to month, year to year, because you may find that you go from one to the other at different times of your carnivore journey. So let's begin. The first school of thought is you know how much meat to eat because you're either hungry or you're not. This is called intuitive carnivore. I have been an intuitive carnivore. I'm friends with intuitive carnivores. Dr. Chafee is an intuitive carnivore. So he would say, how do you know how much meat to eat? Well, if you're hungry, you start to eat meat. And then when you start to get full and it starts to taste less appetizing, then you stop eating meat. When you get hungry again, you repeat the process. Ta-da! Now you're an intuitive carnivore. Did that solve all of your problems? Okay, so that works beautifully for a lot of people. In fact, it did for me as well. I was able to lose a lot of weight as a total carnivore that did not track anything. And that is how I would encourage people to start off carnivore. Do it intuitively, make it so simple. Because why wouldn't you? That works for a lot of folks, especially in the beginning. Have any of you had any weight loss or success being an intuitive carnivore? If so, could you just write that in the chat box? You could say, I lost 20 pounds on intuitive carnivore. And then, I don't know, you could say, and I still am. Or, and then I plateaued. How did it go for you? How did intuitive carnivore go for you? And if that is still you right now, please say so. Say it. Absolutely. That's how I do it. Works like a champ. Good. Don't change that, by the way. If it's simple and it's working, I hope this should go without saying, but it doesn't. Don't mess that up. You don't need to complicate anything that is simple and also working. Do that. Okay, the second way people sometimes figure out how much meat to eat is by using a TDEE. Now, a few problems. One is there are a lot of really wildly inaccurate TDEEs out there. I have personally made one that I use with my group members that is a carnivore calculator, a meat calculator. And it is based on carnivores and carnivore macros and what I have actually seen work through the years. I use that with my groups when people are ready and they say, look, intuitive wasn't working for me. So the very first thing I want to know from anybody who says this isn't working is, okay, how long have you been doing this? If it's only been, say, a couple of weeks, like, let's give that a little more time. All right. We're so quick to change. It could be that intuitive carnivore is going to work great. You give it a little more time. But if somebody says, no, I've been doing this for a while. I lost weight the first 6 months and now I've been stalled for a year. Okay, so we need to figure out what you're doing. We can't adjust. What do they say? You can't manage data that you don't have. So once you know what you're currently doing, and yes, by using the easiest tracking app that you can find. For me, that's Carb Manager. I have used many tracking apps, and I find this one to be very user-friendly. If you have another one that you like, whether it's Chronometer, My Net Diary, My Fitness Pal, Chronometer, however you pronounce it, there are many great apps out there. I would suggest that you just go with the free version. All of them have free versions that are perfectly great for what we're doing here. But if you are struggling and intuitive carnivore isn't working, then I would encourage you to establish just what are you doing already? What does that look like? If you eat the same things on repeat, like truly every day or two looks pretty much the same, then you can establish your baseline as a carnivore in just a couple of days because it all looks the same. If you say, look, every day I wake up, I eat, 2 eggs for breakfast, 2 burger patties for lunch, and a ribeye for dinner, that's about a pound. Okay. And you do that pretty much every day, then we can figure this out. If you have a much more varied carnivore diet and every day looks really different, then I would suggest tracking for several days, maybe even 2 weeks. While you're doing this, there is no good or bad. The goal is to simply be honest. That's how it will be good. Are you just really honest? So every little bit of cream that you put in your coffee, track it. Every pepperoni, pork rind, everything that you eat, just be honest. That's the only goal, is not to say, "Oh, let me fix my macros." We're not fixing anything. You're just trying to determine, what am I doing? And then at the end of that, let's say you track for 10 days. Also, during that time, it would be really wise if you were keeping track of whatever it is you're wanting to improve. For many people, it is they want to lose body fat. If that is the case, I would encourage you to use a body composition scale. I have three of them at my house. I have the InBody, the Vivitar, and the Renfo scale. I will link to all of them below. You could take measurements of yourself. You could try on a pair of really snug pants that may or may not change in 2 weeks. But if that's what you've got, it's great. I also have a little short clip on how to take measurements. I will link that below. For many people, if you've never been a seamstress, you're like, I don't even know how to do that, but it's really simple with this little tutorial. So you get your measurements down, or you go get a DEXA scan, or you get on the InBody, however it is you are measuring it. And perhaps you're not even here for body fat loss. You just want to feel better. So let's go ahead and judge, what is it you're wanting to improve? Is it your sleep? Do you have a way of tracking that? Do you wear a sleep tracking watch or an Aura ring? If it's your moods, do you have a way of journaling that to determine, do you have a rating system? Today, my mood is 10 out of 10. I feel amazing. Or I couldn't get out of bed today. So, whatever you are wanting to fix, just have a way of judging it. If, say, in 2 weeks of tracking, you can decide, do things get better or worse? If you come to the end of the 2 weeks of figuring out exactly what you're doing, and by George, in 2 weeks' time, your measurements have improved or your sleep has improved, whatever you're looking for has gotten better, then congratulations. That's the plan. Do what you did for 2 weeks because it's giving you results. I don't think anybody needs to make any wild changes when it's already working. If at the end of that 2 weeks, though, you say, okay, now I know what I did, and also nothing got better. If you're wanting to fix your sleep and your sleep is still just as bad at the end of 2 weeks, now we know something needs to change. Or in 2 weeks, your body fat hasn't changed at all. Your weight is still the same. Your pants are still just as tight. All of these are signs that whatever you just did, and now you'll know what you did for that time period. It was not giving you the results. And that's the benefit for doing it more like 2 weeks instead of just 2 days. Because what's going to change in 2 days? Not much. So just a reminder now, I'm going to explain. We talked intuitive being the first way people tend to deal with how much meat to eat. This is the second way people tend to do it. This is the most common amongst bodybuilders and just people who are used to tracking and dealing with macros is this. They will tell you to eat 1 gram of protein for every pound of your ideal body weight. You may not even know what your ideal body weight is. You can look it up on an online calculator. I'll put a BMI calculator below, but maybe it's just the weight where you felt so good and you looked so good and it was just like your happy weight. And that's like where you want to get back to. Now, granted, some people will pick a weight from like when they were 22 and it might not be completely realistic, but try to figure what would be ideal. If you kept your muscle, and you got to your ideal body weight, what approximately pounds would that be? 130? Depends on your height, obviously. In this example, we'll say 130. Then that means that in this second type of deciding how much to eat, it is leveraging with fat. We're going to use fat as our lever, is how they do it in a lot of times in the bodybuilding space. So they will say, then if you want to be 130 pounds, then you need to eat at least 130 grams of protein per day. And that is not a bad place to start off. And they say for the rest of your calories, so let's say for your baseline, what you were already doing, you found out that, gosh, I maintained my weight really easily for 2 weeks. It didn't go up, it didn't go down. I maintained my weight easily eating 1,700 calories. Okay. Then they would say, so let's stick at 1,700 calories or even slightly below. You could go down to 1,600 calories or even 1,550. Tiny drop, if any. But you're going to keep your protein at 130 grams because that's your ideal body weight. And all the rest of your calories would come from fat or carbs. Those are the only options. And carnivores, gotta tell you, we're not getting a lot of carbs, right? Some eggs have carbs, some meats, and dairy. But for the most part, all the rest of the calories would come from fat. So 130 grams of protein, everything else from fat to get you up to your calories where you are able to maintain your weight. And then maybe a very slight drop in calories would come from decreasing fat slightly if you don't lose weight, if you don't get results. So they would say if you do that for a couple of weeks, you get your 130 grams of protein, you get the rest of your calories from fat. If the scale is dropping, leave it, keep doing that. Don't change a thing. If it does not drop, then they would say if your weight isn't changing, body composition isn't improving, nothing's getting better, then you would very slightly drop your fat to about maybe 10 or 15 grams per day. So if you were getting 100 grams of fat, then you would now go down to 90 or 85 grams of fat. So they are using that as a lever to control weight loss. It does work pretty well. Okay. The only issues I see with that is sometimes people drop their fat too low, and then you're going to feel it. You are going to feel it. And some people cannot drop their fat. It just doesn't work for them. They tell me, oh my gosh, well, now I'm hungry all the time and I'm not sleeping well. But we're talking about a very small drop in fat, only around 10 grams of fat to 15 grams per day, not per meal. So hopefully you would not feel any difference and you may see the scale start to move. All right, that is the second way. And I'm going to show you how to set that up on Carb Manager as well. The third way, and this is what I tend to do in my groups because it's pretty simple and it also tends to give fantastic results. And those are two things that I really love. And that is using a really reliable TDEE calculator. And I use the one, obviously, that I helped to design. But the TDEE calculator would help you determine, based on your age, size, activity level, and gender, your approximate calorie needs. And then at that point, I have people keep their fat between 60 and 80%. And some people find that they lose weight easier if they keep their fat down to 60%. Others find they lose weight easier if they're up at the 80%. I see both all the time. So if anybody tells you if you're losing weight, you just have to reduce your fat, that is not always true. It's really not. I have known people who say I couldn't lose weight at all when they did super high protein lose and low fat. And then they just change those macros and it works better. But I do suggest that you get plenty of data so you can start to actually see those trends. So if you're going to do a lower fat carnivore where you keep your fat around 60%, do it for a couple of weeks and see how that goes for you. If that doesn't give you any results, you can try bumping to 70% fat or 80% fat. If anyone tries to tell you that the answer is for sure lower your fat or for sure raise your protein, I'm just telling you, you got to work with a lot of people to find out the same answer does not apply to everybody. And the people that I see who tend to do the best with really high protein and lower fat are typically people who are in the gym a lot. They're lifting very heavy. And that is it is an awesome thing to do. Every single person out there should be working muscles until they are fatigued at least a couple times per week. Work your muscles. And it does allow you to use up that protein, puts it to good use. You're going to build some muscle mass, and that's going to help you in the future to stay leaner because you're literally going to help improve your metabolism with every single bit of muscle that you can add to your body. That is very true. Okay, I'm now going to pull up Carb Manager because in order for you to establish your baseline, you're going to have to find a way to track. In order to do this whole protein, grams of protein equals pounds of ideal body weight. If you want to try that tactic, you're still going to need to know how to track. And if you're going to try sticking to a TDEE, you're still going to need to know how to track. And I think there are just a few little hangups that prevent people from tracking. One of which is they're just not in the habit and they forget to do it. And I get you. It does take some practice. In the beginning, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I forgot to enter that and that and that. It becomes second nature. Almost anything in life, every new job you started was so hard at the beginning. There's a learning curve, right? Learning to ride a bike, learning to swim, learning to do anything cool, to play an instrument. In the beginning, you have no idea what you're doing and it's tedious. And the more you do it, the more it just becomes effortless and you're just playing the piano, you're playing the guitar, and you're not thinking about every single thing. Same goes for tracking food. The first few to several days, you're like, gosh, I forgot to do it. This is so tedious. I'm just figuring this out. And then fast forward even a couple of weeks, and you're like, this is so easy, especially as a carnivore. This is so easy because we repeat the same meals so often. All right. If you go to carbmanager.com, and this is the one that I use the most and my group members use the most. So this is what I'm going to talk about. If you have a different one, then you probably already know how to do it. But we'll come here, carbmanager.com. It'll be linked below. I'm not affiliated with this website at all. If you would like, you can enter your email address and then create a free account. Okay, of course, I already have an account and it is here. I went ahead and erased everything I'd entered for today so we can do it together. When you first sign up, you see my name in the very bottom left-hand corner. You can click your name and it's going to do the getting started wizard. What are your goals? Now you can go ahead and tell it if you want to. I don't know if your primary goal is to lose weight right now, then you can unclick the rest of this and hit lose weight. For most people, they're like, well, I do want to lose weight, but I also want to build muscle. Of course, I want energy, better sleep, good glucose, and to be healthier. Whatever. Enter it all if you wish. It doesn't really matter. Then you can tell it your latest weight and what is your goal weight. I've just played around with this with other people. So I am currently at my goal weight. Gender, yes. I am 5'8". Wonder if you can do a half. Nope. Okay. I'm almost 5'9", but we'll go with 8. And birthday, how active I am. Well, I walk a lot. So we'll go for moderately active. Okay, then this avocado shows up and customizes your plan. I don't even eat avocados, but I'm going to tell you, I don't go by what he tells me. So that happy little avocado tells me that in order for me to maintain my body weight, I should be eating 2017 calories. And if I wanted to gain muscle, I would need to eat more, and lose weight, I would need to eat less. But I'll go ahead and tell you, I eat more than any of those things. All right. I typically eat 2,300 to 2,400 calories per day. So approximately what it recommends for gaining muscle. But I don't go by Carb Manager. I do not. What I do, you can come down and click. I usually click carnivore. But if you are high protein keto or, whatever these things you are, you can click it. I typically click carnivore. You can even customize down here. Just know it's a little bit of a pain in the rear end, but I usually put it on carnivore, hit continue, and go on with my day. Next thing I do is I go to my daily log. This here is what the daily log looks like on a laptop. It'll look a little different on the phone. I use both interchangeably. And when I change one on my laptop, it automatically updates on my phone and vice versa. But the only thing I use Carb Manager for is to enter in my food and then see what I have actually done. I do not follow these recommendations here. I'm not saying they're wrong or they're bad. It's just not what I personally go by. So, and I tell my group members the same thing. We're not going to go by that. So for breakfast, if you click the plus sign, see add breakfast, click that. You can either type in at the top eggs and find which one is the most accurate. Did you eat 2 large cooked eggs? If so, great. Add that for breakfast. Just click whatever it is that you ate. You'll find fried eggs, scrambled eggs, boiled eggs, poached eggs, egg salad, all of these things. I typically for breakfast eat 2 quarter-pound beef patties, those every single morning. So then I click this green button at the bottom, which says add. Sorry, my stuff's in the way down there. Add. And then typically for my lunch, I will have 3 more burger patties. I like to make little wraps out of my egg life wraps. So I'll add 3 egg life wraps to make sort of like burger patty tacos. I don't even heat up the wraps. I just eat them straight from the package with my cooked burger patties. And for dinner, I usually have 4 burger patties and 4 egg life wraps. And let's see where that puts me for the day. Oh, when you come up here to the top, click the pie chart and it will show you exactly how much fat and protein percentages you got. And then you can also see up here how many grams of protein and grams of fat. So before bed, I will sometimes have a couple slices of bacon, or I will sometimes add 2 tablespoons of cream to my coffee. That is correct. I do still drink coffee and I'm feeling great and I'm happy with my results. Thank you. Okay, let me add 2 slices of bacon here. Then I'm up to my normal calories between 2,300 and 2,400. And I tend to stay close to 60% fat to 65% fat. Okay, depending on which of the 3 methods you are doing. Obviously, if you're doing intuitive carnivore, you're probably not tracking at all. If you are doing the version where you try to get at least 1 gram of protein for every pound of ideal body weight, well, clearly my ideal body weight is not 202, around 135, but that's a minimum. You can go more. So I definitely did that. If you are trying to have a calorie deficit and you are going by the TDEE, whether it's mine or another one that's out there, then you would look at your TDEE and try to keep your calories in line with that while also making sure that your fat stays between 60 and 80%. If you do that for a couple of weeks, whether you're staying close to 60%, then look at your results after 2 weeks. If you're staying close to 80%, look at your results after a couple of weeks. There are people out there who are going to try to convince you to do one or the other, and I am not one of those people. I want you to know that it's very possible that you will get great results for a couple of weeks doing the 60%, then change it up 70%, change it up to 80%, and only you will know from the results that you get with that measuring tape or calipers or body composition scale, whatever it is you're looking at. Only you will be able to determine which one is working the best. I know I keep saying that, but it is the truth. It really is. So I want to show you just a few tricks on how to track, tricks to track. All right. The first is this: if you tend to eat the same breakfast over and over, then look over here next to breakfast. You click the 3 dots and you can hit copy to. And you can say, oh, tomorrow is Wednesday the 10th. I want to copy that to my breakfast tomorrow. And it will do that. It'll come over here, you hit done. Now you're on tomorrow and you've copied it. If you tend to eat the same meal over and over, I'll go back to today. Let's say every meal you're eating 3 burger patties and 3 wraps. You can just copy that sucker to dinner, copy it to tomorrow's dinner, copy it all day long, copy paste, right? Easy. All right, there are some foods that are really easy to track. This is the handbook that all of my group members get. And there is one little section that is all about tracking. There are some tips here for volume eaters, but also it lists some of the easiest and hardest foods to track. Things that are easy to track are eggs. Just tell it how many. You do not need a food scale for this. You don't need a food scale to determine how many slices of thick bacon or 6-inch bacon did you eat. How many tablespoons of butter. You don't need a food scale. If you're eating 1/4 pound beef patties all day, every day, I do not need to weigh them because the bag says they were 1/4 pound, or you got them at McDonald's. They were 1/4 pound burger patties. Easy. Cans of sardines that are packed in olive oil. That is pretty easy to track as long as somebody has told you the macros, because most cans say that they are drained. And many of us, if you're doing the Dr. Boz method, the sardines are not drained. We're including that 2 tablespoons of fat. So if you do that, then the calories are definitely going to be different than they are on the can. So that's why I send this to my group members so they can have access to all of these different foods. Okay, so under burger patty math, I show them exactly in the handbook here, the entry that I use on Carb Manager. It is a 1/4 pound burger patty cooked with no fat poured back over it. These are the ones that I typically buy, and their instructions are over here. These are the macros for a cooked burger patty with no fat poured back over, a 1/4 pounder like you would get at McDonald's or Wendy's or Hardee's or Burger King, a cooked 1/4 pounder. This is it. Once the fat is cooked off of it and it's ready to eat, it is approximately 220 calories, 67% calories from fat. So then I have my group look at the TDEE. They click here and it determines approximately how many calories they need per day. Let's say it's around 1,700 to 1,800. Then they would know they need 8 cooked 1/4 pound patties per day. Great. They can come down to burger patty math for 1/3 pounders if that is what they mostly buy. These are 2 great brands that don't come as 1/4 pounders. They are 1/3 of a pound. And so they would have these macros. Feel free to screenshot if you wish, or use this entry In Carb Manager, they look for my little flowery plate on there when they type in 1/3 pounds, a third pound cooked burger patty, no fat poured back over. It's already entered into Carb Manager. And then you could use the TDEE to determine how many of those you need per day. Obviously, if you're eating around 1750, it's not going to be as many. It'd be 6 instead of 8. There are some foods that are harder to track though. And so what I've done for them in the handbook is I have screenshotted each of the entries that I use in Carb Manager. So if they are eating cooked, non-breaded chicken wings, even if they didn't come from Publix, Publix has already entered this into Carb Manager. So all you have to do is tell it how many you ate. You don't have to weigh it. I don't love using a food scale. I do occasionally, but I don't love it. Beef fat trimmings, if they are already cooked, you would weigh your beef fat trimmings cooked, because a lot of the fat cooks off of it for people who are just eating straight up fat. If you're eating pork belly, even if it's not from Trader Joe's, I would weigh the pork belly cooked and then type in Trader Joe's pork belly and use this entry because it says here on the package, cooked pork belly. And that's going to give you a far better estimate of what you are eating instead of weighing it raw, cooking off half of it into the bottom of your air fryer and not even eating it. So I list for them some of the harder foods to track, including if they go into Carb Manager, and you can do this too. If you type in dehydrated, whatever the meat is, dehydrated ribeye, it's my entry, Kelly Hogan's entry. So if you just type in dehydrated ribeye, Kelly Hogan, it should pop up. You weigh it after it's dehydrated. So put your dehydrated meat onto the food scale. One of the most common questions I ever get is, should I weigh my meat cooked or raw? You should weigh it however you are entering it. So if you find an entry for cooked pork belly, then you are going to weigh it cooked. If you find an entry for dehydrated ribeye, and that's how you're going to eat it, dehydrated, and you have an entry for dehydrated ribeye, then you weigh it dehydrated. Most people will tell you to weigh your meat raw, and there's a reason for that, because most of the entries in Carb Manager are raw meat entries. So if the entry is for raw ribeye, you weigh it raw, and the entry already accounts for the fact that you are going to cook it and some is going to cook off. Right, so if your meat was already cooked, let's say you forgot to weigh it, or perhaps you're at a restaurant and you can look at it now and say, I don't know, I think this is about 8 ounces of meat. Good heavens, I hope you aren't necessarily traveling with a scale everywhere you go. But if you're trying to be accurate, maybe you are, and you enter that you had beef and it was a steak that was fried or air fried or grilled, whatever it is, you can then enter, if you know the cooked weight, let's say now it is a 12-ounce steak because it's cooked, then it adds back how much of the water weight was cooked out of it. So it adds back that lost 25-ish%. So let's say you baked fish, you forgot to weigh it when it was raw. So you come on here and you weigh it cooked. Now it is a 12-ounce, not 127, a 12-ounce piece of fish that was baked. Well, it probably started off at about 14 ounces. All right, fish doesn't change as much as beef because hardly any fat cooks off of it. That is getting into the nitty-gritty of it, but I will link to this calculator as well, how to convert it from raw to cooked. The main answer to that question is enter what it is you are weighing and weigh what it is you are entering. If it is raw, then enter it raw. Hey, another thing that I think is really helpful that I do for my group people, I do let them know how to set up Carb Manager, which I just talked y'all through. I do think it's important to try to get around 30 grams of protein or more per meal, especially at breakfast. Kick off your day with a really good dose of protein, at least 30 grams of protein and some fat with it. And then I also send them some examples of what it would look like to eat 1,800 calories per day. So I took screenshots from Carb Manager and then also type it out to the side of what a day of eating would look like at 1,800 calories or 1,650, 1,800 calories with a high fat, 80-20. And some of these I do at more of a 75% ratio, which works great for a lot of people. if you are using fat as the leverage and you're trying to keep your protein to your ideal 1 gram of protein for every pound of ideal body weight, that you could take note of those over here and see, okay, well, what would that look like? And for that number of calories, right? So this is just an educational tool. I've shown them how they could do it with just ribeyes and butter. I've shown them how they could do it with just burger patties and butter. How to do it with sardines for those who are interested. These are my favorite sardines, by the way. I've tried many kinds. This is my favorite. Okay, let's come back over to Carb Manager. Just a few tricks to remind you of. If you click the pie chart, you'll get your percentages. Some people don't care about the percentage. All they are looking at is, am I getting 1 gram of protein for every pound of ideal body weight as a minimum, and then getting the rest of my calories from fat while keeping myself in a calorie deficit. You'll know you're in a deficit if, well, I use the TDEE to determine it, but some people say you'll know in a deficit when you're losing weight. But I'm here to tell you, I know people who eat very little food and they track like crazy. And if they're in too much of a deficit, they will stop losing weight. This is why I do prefer that people at least check in with a TDEE calculator to make sure you're not way under eating. It is a thing. I don't care who says it isn't. It is a thing. I've seen people just eat so very little, and I know they're not delusional. They are tracking every bite and they don't lose weight when they do that. So if that's you, then looking at your calories and then also making sure you're getting in protein, or you can do it like I do with my groups where you say, okay, I'm going to look at my TDEE, keep my calories in a slight deficit, and keep my fat between 60 and 80%, and then take note over a 2-week period of, did I get better results when I was closer to 60, 65, 70, 80? Just look at it and your body will let you know. Also, your sleep will let you know, and your libido will let you know, and your energy levels, how are you healing? All of that will let you know. And then you can come into Carb Manager and play. Oh, this is another great tip. So let's say we clear all of this out. You can just go to remove all breakfast, remove all for lunch, remove all for dinner. Done. Oh, remove that bacon before bed. Blank slate. You can just come in and play around with it and say, well, okay, I really like to eat, almost click skinless, boneless chicken breast, but who loves that? New York strip steak. All right. So you would enter New York strip steak, you would measure it raw, you enter it raw. Great. And it's going to tell you your macros for that. And you say, okay, so what if I did that? What if I did that 3 times per day? Hit copy to lunch and hit done. Copy to dinner. Hit done. And now you have a day where you have strip steak, New York strips, 3 times a day, and you can see, huh, so that keeps my fat at around 65%, calories at about 2,000. What if I do that for a few days? See what happens. Yeah. What if you did? What if your favorite carnivore food is a New York strip steak with a couple of eggs? Maybe you like 2 eggs with your New York strip. So you add in some eggs. All I'm saying is go in and play, and you can determine, I think this day of eating sounds really tasty. It's going to give me a great amount of protein. It would give me this number of calories. And then I do teach my group members how to then enter that data onto a sheet, something like this, to determine how those foods are affecting their own bodies. But you don't have to use my tracking sheet. You can literally journal it out. But I mostly today wanted to tell you that if you are eating intuitively and getting great results, you should keep doing that. I say that as point number 1. Number 2, if you are not getting great results doing this intuitively, I would encourage you to at least figure out what you are doing. Wow, that light is really bright. I'm going to turn the camera around. Hold on. Okay. So if intuitive isn't working, then I would encourage you to just track for a while. You can determine how long that is, but I'd say a little longer is better to determine what it is you are currently doing right now. And then that's when you can play around and decide, okay, well, I'm going to try this fat leverage thing where I'm going to eat the number of grams of protein 1 gram of protein for every pound of ideal body weight, or I'm going to find a TDEE calculator that I trust, and I'm going to try sticking to the recommended number of calories there and try to keep my fat between 60 and 80% and just take note of how it affects my body. Both of those are great strategies, and I've seen them work for a lot of people. All three of them are great strategies: intuitive, the fat as a lever, or sticking to a TDEE calculator. All of it is good. If you have other ways that you have determined how to do this, please feel free to comment in the comment section below. We can all learn from one another what it is that actually helped you get better results. And let's also remind ourselves that it's not all 100% just about the food, the calories, the macros. Cutting carbs in itself is really helpful for most people for getting healthy and losing weight, but also getting morning sunlight, touching the earth, getting good sleep, talking out our stresses, trying to lower our stress levels or at least manage stress through breath work and through journaling, praying, talking to a friend. All of that is really helpful as well. Work your muscles until they are fatigued is always a great thing to do. Remember, the more lean mass that we can build, the easier it will be to keep off body fat. So those 5 pillars that I talk about in almost every video always, we're going to keep out the junk, sugar, the carbs, processed foods. We're going to fuel our body with nutrient-dense meats. Yes. We're going to make sure we're getting good sleep. The rest of these are in no particular order. We're going to make sure that we get good sleep every night. I've sometimes put up something for you to screenshot here about sleep. So if you don't have that screenshot, here it is. There are some tools for stress management, how to deal with high amounts of stress in your life that are keeping your cortisol high, which makes it very hard to lose weight. So there's some tips to deal with that. And then moving your body. That could be, you're going to use muscles even when you walk. When somebody says, don't walk, you've got to use your muscles. Well, I'm not hovering, okay? I'm walking up hills. I stop sometimes and do some squats. I do push-ups every single day. But yes, I do also walk and I do get better results when it comes to body fat. And again, I am keeping tabs on my lean muscle mass. I have average to above average amounts of muscle mass, and I want to preserve that. I don't do anything that's going to jeopardize that. So if you are increasing your fat and you do notice, oh my gosh, my muscle mass is not staying as high as it was, then I would work on that. We've got to preserve muscle. When you lose a lot of weight, a certain percentage is almost always going to come some from lean mass. If you were 300 pounds and you dropped 150 pounds, I'm here to tell you some of it was lean mass, but we want to preserve as much as we can. That's always the goal. Okay. I know that doesn't solve every question. If you need more help, I would love to work with you, but I hope that at least gives you a look into different ways I choose to work with people who are in the groups and the direction that you can take at home with this free app that is available to anybody. And if you want more help or access to the handbook and the TDEE and just some group support where we can share what's working this week. And let me tell you my good news, or could you troubleshoot this with me? Come on over. We have Zoom meetings every single week, live face to face, where I can see you and talk to you. And you can ask me questions. And then I also share every single bite that I take every single day in the Facebook groups. I share my macros and how I enter it in the Carb Manager. And you also have the people around you. If you missed the last video, I talked a lot about how important it is who we surround ourselves with. So I hope something there was helpful. Eat the meat. Save the humans.